Welcome to LSAT Unplugged.
Thank you so much, Steve, for having me.
It's great to be with you now. You're an attorney, you're working out there in the world, and you've helped many others through the process as well. I'm hoping you can share a little bit of career advice for folks who are looking to go to law school, folks who are in law school looking to go off on their journeys afterwards. What advice do you have? And maybe you could share a bit about your own story to kind of inform this. What got you to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So, Steve, I was actually one of those young gals who in high school, I participated in my youth and government program. I was actually president of my youth and government chapter in my high school. And we appeared before the mock Supreme Court in the Ohio Supreme Court chambers. And my partner and I were first and second chair of this case. And we actually, our side won the case in the mock trial. And I thought, there's something to this. I might actually enjoy being a lawyer and I might actually be halfway decent at it. So what happened from there is I went to college and I was a political science major in the honors program of Miami University in Ohio. And I just always knew that I wanted to focus on the area of healthcare law. I had taken a lot of bioethics honors courses in college, and I was just fascinated with the idea of law and ethics. So I went to Case Western Reserve Law School in Cleveland, Ohio, which had one of the top 3 ranked health law programs in the country, and took advantage of all their health law classes. So for me, in my own journey, I always had sort of known it was something I want to do, but I do recognize that not everyone has that calling right away. So what I guess my advice is that I encourage students to take some pre-law classes or political science classes while you're in college. Get some exposure to the law or get involved in some ways where you can go watch a case in court and get a feel of what it really is so that you can have a trial before you actually apply to law school and go through the process of taking the LSAT and applying to law school. But if you have that calling, follow it. And if you're exploring, then I encourage you just to actually dive into taking some classes or having some experiences to test it out and see if it's a good fit for you.
Thanks for that, Lisa. That is some great advice. Now, before we hit record, we were talking a bit about non-traditional career paths with a law degree. And I see so many folks out there in the world who went to law school, but they're doing completely different things. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a bit about the idea of going to law school and then maybe deciding to take a different path, but still have law school be worth it in some way, still benefit from the JD.
Totally. In fact, that is my journey, Steve. So here's what happened. After I went to Case Western Reserve Law School and I really focused on healthcare law, I was the managing editor of the Health Law Journal. I had an internship in Washington, D.C. when I was in law school, working on Capitol Hill and working with healthcare legislation. And once I got out, I did get a job in the top health law firm in the state of Ohio. And I was very honored. It was a big firm with mahogany walls and a cushy paycheck. And it was exactly what I had wanted. And I worked there for several years and got great training. And there came a point where I realized that the big firm life and lifestyle was not the best suited for me. And I'm sure they felt the same way. It wasn't a match. And so I actually left. I left the firm and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do next. I was in my early 30s. I knew that I had valued my legal education and I valued my law firm experience. So what I did was something entirely different. I went to work in nonprofit. And a lot of people were surprised to hear that, right? But I worked in major gifts and planned giving of a large nonprofit where I helped people basically make charitable gifts through their wills or their trusts, and worked with the endowment and helped raise money for charity, which felt really good to me. It was helpful that I was a lawyer. It was helpful that I had those credentials as a lawyer, but I didn't have to be a lawyer in that job. And I worked in nonprofit for over a decade, and it served me really well. I traveled around the city and then I traveled around the country and raised money. And, over the course of my nonprofit work, I raised over $32 million for charity. So even though I am a lawyer and was a lawyer at the time, I still felt like I was helping the world in a significant way without practicing law. And then a funny thing happened. I actually had always had this interest in health and wellness, which is part of the reason why I wanted to be a healthcare lawyer. So I became a health coach through a school called the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And I also became a life coach through Coach U. And I actually hung out my shingle for a while as a health and life coach. And what was so strange is that my health and life coaching clients would say to me, and my peers would say, but Lisa, you're a lawyer. Wait a minute. This is great that you're a coach and you're helping people how to, drink green smoothies and live a healthy lifestyle. But wait a minute, you're a lawyer. So in working with my own coach, I discovered that I actually wanted to practice law again. So I reinstated my license after years of not having an active license. And I decided I wanted to approach law with a slightly different style, and that I wanted to actually bring more love into the law, which is not something that you hear of often. And I also align legal steps with the chakras because I wanted to bring some spirituality into the law. So this is a totally unique and different way to practice law that I actually wondered if lawyers would think I was crazy to do it this way. But what I have found is that there's so many small business owners who are afraid of law and lawyers, and it's overwhelming and confusing. And so the fact that I happen to be a female lawyer who was taking sort of a softer approach to the law in my own way was very appealing to them. And I now work with hundreds of entrepreneurs and coaches and female entrepreneurs, some men too, of course, but people who want a gentler approach to the law. But I will say to you this, Steve, that even though my law career has had such a circuitous route, I never in a million years thought I would come back to practicing law in an active way. And it's because I had such solid training in a traditional law firm in a traditional setting that I was able to come back around and draw on that training and then sort of add my own unique spin to the practice. I never would have been able to do this had I not gone from the traditional law firm, stepped away for a bit, and then be able to come back to it in such a holistic way.
That's such a valuable insight, Lisa, and such an incredible story too, because you ended up being able to do something that you love and something that you've crafted yourself, that there's nothing else like it out there.
That's exactly right. And I have a lighted ampersand marquee on my wall here behind me because I always talk about the fact that I bring love and the care of a coach and the approachability of a coach into the law, which can often feel harsher for people. I try to bring the two together so that it can have a more holistic feel and not be quite so intimidating or overwhelming or scary to people. This is very new. This is a very new way to talk about the law, I think. And what I love is that you're helping students take the LSAT, learn how to prepare themselves for a career in law, and then realize that you can receive training in a traditional environment with a firm or the government or in a nonprofit or advocacy work, and then also find a way to infuse your own personality and your own branding and your own sense of who you are into that practice.
That is so true. And I think that more law school grads than ever are eventually going into solo practice.
Yes.
And I think that allows a lot of opportunity to create your own space, create your own style of practicing law. And I gather that you're doing a combination of things where it's legal practice and legal advice along with the coaching and the more holistic approach.
Yes. And one of the things I think that's so important is when I stepped away from the law, when I left the law firm, Steve, my biggest fear is that I was going to let down my family. I was going to let down my grandparents who helped to pay for my legal education, or my parents who had invested so much in me. And there was such a beautiful gift in that they recognize that you can use a legal degree in many different ways and you can approach law in many different ways. And I don't think I got that message when I was very young, starting in the law career. Now, granted, that was several decades ago, and now the world has changed with social media and online and the world feeling like such a smaller place that you can use your law degree in a traditional way, and you can also help the world in other ways or with your own branding or personality in your own solo practice. There's so many ways to use your degree. You're not limited to the ways that we used to be limited even several decades ago. So it's such a great climate right now, I think, for the profession to be able to work in a traditional firm or to be able to have your own solo practice and bring your own sort of personality and spin to the law, obviously operating within the bounds of the law.
Yeah, that's really valuable. I think that so many people, they're going to do the traditional route for a few years,
Yeah.
build their experience and build their foundation. But then I'm wondering, what opportunities might there be available to them afterwards when they do want to kind of go out on their own and carve their own path? Are there some examples that you've seen in your own work or your work with clients where people are kind of putting their own unique spin on things?
Yeah, sure. So as I shared with Steve prior to our conversation, I am a huge proponent of getting a traditional base. I've had some law students or young lawyers reach out and say, Lisa, I'm brand new. How can I do it the way you're doing it? And my initial response is, if you feel called to do that, by all means, go for it. And what I would recommend is that you actually do receive the mentoring and the structure and the approach and the learning from a more traditional environment first, so that you can have a sense of the system of law, even if you don't always feel aligned with it personally. It's kind of like, we all need to learn how to paint properly in art class using proper techniques before you go off on your own and you create your own Jackson Pollock painting yourself, right? It's the same type of thing. It's good to learn fundamentals before you put your own spin on it. But what I found is that there aren't many of us in the holistic space anyway, where we are combining more of our personal approach to the practice of law. So I know that for me, I bring love and spirituality, meaning aligning legal steps with chakras, talking about energy and the energetics of the law. That's very unique to my messaging. I wrote a book called Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul that came out 2 years ago, which is certainly not a common way to talk about the law. There are others out there who work with entrepreneurs I have a friend who calls herself the sparkly lawyer, which is also sort of jarring sometimes to think, wait, what? Sparkles in law? What are you talking about? But the idea is that she's trying to show that there's other facets of her personality and of who she is that aren't just being a lawyer with a brain who does legal work. As you do put your own spin on it, I think sometimes it's important to find the unique characteristics about you that will set you apart from someone else. I also have another friend who calls herself the legal warrior because she likes to work in a more direct sort of, I want to say, masculine way. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Whereas my way and the sparkly lawyer's way is to do it in a little bit of a softer approach. So there's no right or wrong really about how you market yourself or how you present yourself to the world. Just do it in a way that feels authentically aligned with who you are, and not try to copy someone else, not try to use other people's marketing, not try to take their work as your own, but create your own work with your own message that's aligned with your own unique skills and talents.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you kind of create your own brand around your authentic personality, and then that will help you attract the clients who that most speaks to, and then that'll be the best fit for you as well.
Exactly. That's exactly right, Steve. And you have done that with your work. Not everyone who prepares people for taking LSAT have a podcast and a video series and interviews other lawyers online like this. So you have done that as well and made that the mark. When I took the LSAT, we just went to a class and used a book and listened to someone talk to us. There was no creativity involved in that at all. So you have found a way to put your unique spin on it too. And that's part of what I think helps people to realize, obviously, what makes you stand out and makes you unique and makes you approachable and makes you desired in terms of working with them. But at the same time, it also prevents a lot of competition. And that's something I want to talk about, because lawyers by nature, or those drawn to the law, we have strong competitive sides. No, there's no doubt about that. And one of the things that I think is so important that I've learned as I've grown is that when you're in your lane, and you are truly offering marketing and messaging and sharing what you do in a way that is uniquely aligned with your strengths and talents, there's no one else like you in the world. There's no other lawyer or no other LSAT educator or no other person out there who has your background and your passions and your voice and your talents and your care that can express themselves the way that you can. And the more that you get super clear on bringing different parts of you into your work, the less you are going to be confused with any other lawyer or brand. And also there's not a lot of competition because you're unique. And that is a very expansive way and a very open way to look at the work that you do, rather than feeling like there isn't enough, there's too many lawyers, how am I going to stand out? You just present who you are and people will be drawn to your true expression of yourself.
I love it. That is such valuable advice. And I suppose it's never too early to start that process of getting to know yourself better.
That's right. Well, this is the coach in me coming out a little bit, right? Not just the lawyer, but that's who I am. I am a holistic health and life coach on the one hand and a lawyer on the other hand. And the two come together, but that's also part of what makes me unique. And I think you're right, whether you're in high school or you're in college preparing to take your exams, or whether you're applying to law school down the road, whatever it is, the more that you're right. So you're so right, Steve, the more that you can figure out what do I really care about? What is important to me? How do I want to be known? How do I want to show up in the world? What are my values? Then that comes out in who you are. And then it will eventually come out in the way that you practice law, the way that you work with clients, the way that you hold yourself out, the way that you present your law firm or your brand. It's really, really important.
Definitely. And it sounds like you're doing a lot of the work to help people discover more about themselves through your coaching. And given that, of course, you're doing legal work and my audience is pre-law students primarily, I'm sure they'll find your work valuable and useful. I know you have a podcast, you have a website. Do you want to share some of the details on each of those?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I have a podcast called Get Legally Enlightened with Lisa Fraley, Legally Enlightened with Lisa Fraley. It's available on iTunes or on my website at lisafraley.com. And basically the podcast is very short, bite-sized episodes, 20 minutes or less, about really basic legal concepts. Like, when do I need an LLC? And what are 5 elements that should be in every client contract? They're designed to help entrepreneurs and business owners understand super simply legal concepts, because you all know who are listening that the law can be very complex. It can be very overwhelming for people, and it's exciting intellectually, it's interesting. And, the job of any good business owner is to take your area of expertise and make it bite-sized and easy for people to understand. So I wanted to create the podcast, 20 minutes or less, super quick episodes to help people get basic legal concepts. And then I also have do-it-yourself legal templates, and my website is lisafraley.com, where people can find resources and do-it-yourself templates and other information too to support businesses who need legal help. So thank you, Steve, for inviting me to share that.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It sounds like that's an amazing resource. I love that you're boiling down the law and making it so simple. I try to do the same with the LSAT, which is also a pretty complex topic. And
totally,
things are scary at first, but if you just use plain English, make it as simple as possible. I love that you're keeping it 20 minutes or less, just for the layperson really to help them get a better sense of what they need to know when they need to know it. And I think that for future law students who want to better understand the law before they go down that path, I think you're offering a great resource there too.
Thank you. Well, and Steve, honestly, that's also why I wrote my book, which is Easy Legal Steps That Are Also Good for Your Soul, which you can find on Amazon or through my website. The reason I did that was to talk about my own experience and growth as an entrepreneur and a lawyer, my own personal story, and to help people understand basic legal steps. So that might be something that might be interesting to pre-law students as well, so they can read more about my journey, if that's helpful or inspiring in any way, and also talk about the law in a really different way, because I align legal steps with the chakras and talk about law and energy in the book as well. So that might be a helpful, very inexpensive, accessible resource as well.
Very cool, Lisa. Well, I'll make sure to include links to all of those in the description for this episode.
Great.
But thank you again for taking the time to speak with us today, Lisa. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Steve. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help people become educated and not scared of taking the LSAT, and to move forward with their desire to go to law school if that is their dream or wish. We need more people like you making the LSAT easy to understand and approachable. And so thank you for the work that you do as well.
Really nice of you to say, Lisa. Well, again, all the best and take care.
Thank you.